Hi, my name's Jeffrey. I'm an amateur audio engineer, and I'm going to share with you a couple of problems I ran into while mixing with headphones and how I got around them. The first is that my hearing is slightly lopsided, but I didn't know it. To be fair to myself, I think we all tend to assume our bodies are symmetrical. Yeah, they aren't. But under the hood, our brain does a lot of things to compensate. So when listening to music from speakers, since both ears hear everything, I figure my good ear was compensating for my not as good ear. Then with headphones or earbuds, my one ear wasn't so bad that I noticed any difference. But after mixing on headphones and going out to do the car test, I might notice a cymbal or a guitar or really anything off-center standing out more than I wanted. But when I'd go back to my desk and put on the headphones, the mix sounded fine. Yeah, well, it wasn't the car, and it was only by chance that I noticed I hear better out of one ear than the other. Okay, odds are you're fine, but it just takes a few minutes to make sure. And if you find you're a bit off kilter like I am, then there's a simple correction to apply while mixing. First, open a song, new one or existing one, doesn't matter. Then go to the View menu, or press F7 to show effects. And we want to scroll down and find the tone generator. Here it is, so we'll just grab that, drag it out to the open area. That will create a new track and open the tone generator. Let's go ahead and pin that. And now we want to open the Binaural Pan. Here it is. We'll drop that in on the track. And we can go ahead and pin that just for good measure too. Okay, with the tone generator at 440 Hertz, let's go ahead and bring down the level a little bit. And then turn it on. You can bring it up to a comfortable level. And now, position your cursor over the pan control. And with your eyes closed, and this is even a good idea when you're mixing, sometimes just close your eyes, but with your eyes closed, drag or scroll it back and forth until the tone sounds like it's dead center in your head. Okay, for me, that's about at this 55% right. I can check it by turning it on and off. Yeah, it sounds a little bit to the left to me now. Turn it back on. And yeah, to me, that sounds centered. Okay, now for you, when you do this, if you're pretty much at the center, you're good to go. You can jump ahead to the next chapter. But if it's not centered, try doing like I did. Turn it on and off a few times, see if you hear any difference. And if it clearly appears to be off center when it's off and then close to the center when it's on, you're going to want to save this value. So let's go ahead and do that. Click right here, store preset, and I'll call it headphone correction. Once you have that, now you'll want to load it either into your main bus or into the listen bus. If you put it in your main bus, remember to shut it off anytime you do a mix down. And that's why I like to put it in the listen bus. If you haven't set up the listen bus before, we can do that by opening up the console, either from the View pull down or by pressing F3. And now I have to get this out of the way. Over here on the left is a little wrench. Click on that. And then down at the bottom is Enable Listen Bus. And you see over here on the right, you have a listen bus. So your mix downs will go through the main, but what you hear comes through the listen bus. And now if you want to add your headphone correction, just go over here to Binaural Pan. There it is, headphone correction. Just drag and drop it right in, and you're good to go. Okay, and that brings us to the second problem, which has less to do with headphones and more to do with the fact that I'm stupid. How many times have I heard the advice to use a reference track and never done it? Well, if you're like me and have ignored that advice, let me give you a little analogy on why you should use a reference track, and then some advice on how to set one up in Studio One. Let's start with the analogy. Imagine, through a series of highly unlikely events, you're in possession of Van Gogh's Starry Night painting, which you display proudly in your well-lit living room. As a painter yourself, you decide to try making your own copy. So you go down into your studio to start your cover version. And of course, you know what the painting looks like, so you don't bring it with you. The lighting in your studio is a bit darker and warmer than your living room, but it is what it is. You like it that way. You sketch out a plan and start painting. During breaks in your living room, you study the original to try to match it perfectly. And then finally, the big day comes. Your version is done, the paint is dry, you think you've nailed it. With an excited air, you bring it up to your living room to put your copy up against the original, and crap. The brush strokes are right, but the colors are wrong. What happened? It's obvious, right? The lighting in your studio isn't the same as in the living room. So what's the solution? Right. Bring the original to your studio so you can see it under the same lighting as your copy. That'll help get the colors right and moves you out of the world of your own imagination and into the world of reality. Now, before somebody starts picking holes in this, all analogies break down at some point. But the point here is that the audio inside your headphones sounds different than it does in your car or your living room or in your earbuds or wherever you normally listen to music. So, and this is the second point, any commercial, professionally mixed music you can pull into your environment to use as a reference will help you. If nothing else, use it as a guide to get your levels right. How loud are the drums versus the keyboards and guitars? That was an eye-opener for me as a guitarist. Percussion is always louder than I imagined. So let's see how easy it is to set up a reference track in Studio One. Okay, here I have an example of a project I did a while ago where I have a reference track up here. And what I used to do was just mute that out, and when I wanted to listen to it, I'd solo it. The problem with that, of course, is if you've soloed another track, now you'll get that track and your reference track. So here's the trick that I learned from Gregor. First of all, open up your console with F3 or use the pull-down menu. Then go to the I/O button, click on that, go to the Output tab, and now click on Add Stereo, which will add a stereo output. We'll call it Reference, and then click OK. And that will show up in your console, except it's not quite showing here, so we just need to drag that out a little bit. And there it is. Okay, now click Mute, or you'll hear this all the time. And finally, we'll go up to our reference track. We'll unmute that. We'll go down here, and we'll change its output from main to reference. And now, unfortunately, I don't have the mechanical license to play this over YouTube, so you'll have to trust me. But we can switch back and forth between the main and the reference output. So let's play this and see what we've got. Okay, right now it's just going out through the main. Now if I solo that, now that's your reference, and that's what you'll be hearing. Another trick that I like to do is to put a ProEQ in the listen bus. And then what you can do is go up here to sidechain, select your reference track, and now you can see both. In blue is your mix, and in fuchsia is the reference track, which is running a little hotter than the mix, which will normally be the case. You can bring that down. Don't do that, the reference will always sound better than your mix. And then this is just handy for a reference. You should always trust your ears and mix with your ears more than your eyes, but this may give you some visual cues of things to listen for. Another thing you might want to try with your reference track is to put a ProEQ in and then play with it. Turn on the low cut and then sweep that up and listen to what disappears as you move your way up and what's still there. It's really a fun little exercise. And then, of course, you can do the same thing in the other direction. Cut the highs, listen to what's left. Okay, another thing to try, and this idea comes via Joe Gilder, is to drop a Multiband Dynamics compressor into the reference output channel, and then, as you're playing back the reference track, you can solo out sections just to get a sense of what you hear in these various frequency ranges. And alternatively, you can do the same thing by muting out a section. Hear what it sounds like without those frequencies. It's all about training your ears, right? Oh, also while you're listening to the reference track, it can be instructive to grab the binaural pan, remember that? Drag it into your reference channel, and then sweep it all the way to the left, listen to what's there and what's not, and then grab it, bring it back to the center, and then sweep it all the way to the right, listen to what's there and what's not. And of course, while I'm in here, I should have grabbed my binaural headphone correction and dropped that into my reference channel as well. Okay, in the description are links to a couple other videos about mixing using headphones, as well as a link to Gregor's video about setting up a reference track. Remember, he calls it a guide track. I hope that helps. Again, this is Jeffrey. Until next time, happy mixing, my friends.